Please join me in welcoming our esteemed guest, Willie Tillery.
Thanks, Carl. Thank you all. So excited to be here. It's been a long time, 15 years, since sitting out there and watching other presenters. And thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. Hopefully, you gain just a little bit from it. So the topics for today, I'll just cover, my background, what I did in creating a healthcare technology company, and a little bit about how I did it, and you'll hear that throughout the presentation, and what I'm doing now with all the riches from selling the company. So I was born in North Carolina. One second. Born in North Carolina, grew up with my grandparents, and they were two business owners. In fact, my grandparents started a concrete company with a 6th grade education. And I can remember thinking back, always wanting to run that business. Of course, they never let me run it, but they were quick to give me a shovel and pay me $5 an hour if I was lucky. So I knew there had to be a better way than that. But I had a passion for computers and electronics, and I always wanted to know how they worked, and I just felt that I could maybe invent something or start a company and build it if I, pursued electronics, and that led me to electrical engineering, right? Went to A&T, met some smart folks there, and was constantly asking, how could I apply, this class or what I'm learning in, this field to starting a business. It was hard to get my peers to join the bandwagon. Most people want to go to school, which is good too, and go it the right way, get a degree, and then start working, gain some knowledge, and then start a business versus what you would see outside of the norm, like in Silicon Valley, a lot of younger folks. I think I was like 22, 23 years old, trying to start a company right out of school. Well, that led me to getting a Boeing scholarship. So I was able to go and intern with Boeing in Seattle and pretty much learn what I didn't want to do, which is also helpful. So knowing what you don't want to do and knowing what you want to do lets you focus and narrow in, your goals. And then Georgia Tech, the Boeing scholarship transferred over to a Boeing fellowship. And again, a lot of smart people. It was hard to get people to take that risk and start a company, but 2 people actually decided to jump on the bandwagon. And I can remember we wrote our first business plan, met with Terry and a few others. I think our business plan, out of the entire group, who could guess what we ranked out of 10? I think it was 10. I think we got last place out of 10. And the thing is, the business folks didn't want to partner with the engineering folks, and it hurt my feelings a little bit. We got last place, but it didn't stop us. We ended up finding some way to get into the ATDC. In fact, once we got into the ATDC, we thought we succeeded. I raised seed capital, thought we succeeded after raising seed capital, and I'll get into all the details of that process too, so that you can learn a little bit. But just imagine, starting off as a student, not knowing anything about business or sales or technology or raising capital or even hiring and firing employees. And people believing that you can be that leader, right? It's extremely difficult. So what did I do? About 15 years ago, after graduating, I started sleeping on couches, and it was my co-founder who was still in school, and started NeuroStar Solutions. We set goals, made sure we reached out to people that were knowledgeable in the field. I had at least 10, 20 ideas, and thinking back now, 19 of those ideas were terrible, but I wanted to protect each one because I just didn't know. But getting feedback from experienced people in the industry, whether it was healthcare or outside of healthcare, or even at school with Terry and John Luc Chameau and Bill Oakes, I was able to, again, set small targets and hit these goals and build confidence with the relationships I built. And over time, 6 months to 12 months later, we raised our first round, up to $500,000. We built the product. It was more of a basic system to let doctors view images online with a browser. And we landed our first client, Piedmont Hospital, and I was really excited and happy. Our first check from Piedmont, guess what? How much it was? Hospitals normally pay like $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 for technology. They paid us $283. And I showed Terry, and I was excited, and she laughed. She was like, "What can you do with that?" It doesn't last long, but I knew if I can get a hospital to buy a product that we built, we can get them to pay us more. And they're still a client to this day, and they ended up paying us $10,000 a month. So, we persevered through it and found our way. But we evolved from NeuroStar to Accelarad, which is a technology that connects hospitals, patients, and doctors to share and exchange all types of medical images, x-rays, MRIs, CTs, ultrasounds, as opposed to burning CDs and shipping film. Makes life so much easier for patients, doctors to get quicker and easier access to these images in a timely manner. Nuance saw value in that and bought it. So today, we're in over 2,000 facilities across the US. So you can go to Piedmont today, you can go to Northside, Kaiser here in Georgia, and if you want your images online, if you want to see them with your iPad or iPhone, you can see your CTs or MRIs on your mobile device. Instead of taking a CD to a specialist for a second opinion, you can simply share it, send them an invitation and share it with them online so they could see it. So that was something that was completely different than the norm in healthcare because they're used to older technologies. Healthcare moves extremely slow. We reach over 150,000 physicians, millions of patients benefit from it. Big time institutions. Nuance Communications is a major, I think multi-billion-dollar company across the US. The reason why they saw value in our technology, even though I built it from 0 to somewhere around 6 to 10 million in revenue, they saw value in that 1.3 billion opportunity and was willing to pay up for it. So they paid over 6 times that amount. So whether it's small hospitals, mid-sized hospitals, or even consumers, you assess that market and you determine how much runway is left to capitalize and get a return on that investment. And so the product works in a way where it's almost like a viral growth hub and spoke. So a hospital will sign up and send out invitations to other hospitals to connect with them, other doctors and patients, just like LinkedIn. Just imagine Flickr or Facebook, but for medical imaging. That makes sense. And again, we identified some major challenges in healthcare that were significant in terms of costs, whether it was through waste, coordination of care, or fraud and abuse with overutilization, repeat exams, and just clinical inefficiencies. And so here's like a quick timeline of sort of the events over the past 15 years, and to me, it's almost like a blur. It happened like I graduated, and all of a sudden you start a company and you set these goals, and there's all these challenges, in between. And then 15 years later, what do you have? I thought I'd be retired and, at the Bahamas or something. But when you get acquired, there's things that you have to do. You have to transition the company over to the new company, help them understand the technology, and then when they pay you a certain amount to stay, it's hard to say no, right? So then they start working you harder. So before 2006, going back to our first product, the challenges that we faced, again, not knowing a lot about business and how to sell and how to support a client, we had to learn the hard way and was able to get through 9/11 or the dot-com bubble burst. Again, we raised seed round capital, and that lasted like a year and a half. So what do you do if you have employees and you have payroll and there's negative 10,000 in the bank? So those are the types of challenges, and fortunately, we've never missed a payroll. I found ways to either raise more capital, or ultimately what you really want is to get the clients to pay you enough to cover your costs. That gives you a longer runway instead of raising capital. A lot of companies do this, but they raise capital and raise more capital, which in effect, you lose equity. So the more capital you raise, the more cost it is for you personally, but that ultimately doesn't make a business. What makes a business is you have to make more than you spend, right? So you have a profit. And someone back in school asked, what makes you think you could start a company? I said, it's simple. It's just you got to sell more than you spend, and you got to make more money. You got to make a profit. Just keep it that simple. But in between, if I would have known, I probably wouldn't have taken that leap. But now that I succeeded, I wouldn't trade it for the world, because you learn so much in the process. And so we went through building a product, 2 years, no one buying it. We're engineers, build the best thing, out there. What are they thinking? Why aren't they buying our product? Knocking on doors, no one wanted to buy the product. So we had to learn the hard way how to sell. There's a complex sell process, and if you're in business school, you'll probably learn that. Certain environments, there's different people that make decisions. It took us a while to figure that out. So once you figure out how to sell, then how do you solve, scalability problems? How do you, get your price point to a point where you are profitable with your cost of goods? So many things that was a challenge from year 2000 up to 2006. But we found a way to find a niche, built a niche solution in teleradiology, and looked at how we could help them generate more revenue, how we could help them make more money. And with that, as they grew, we grew with them organically. And so we rode that wave from 2002 up to 2006, and then I decided to raise institutional capital. Raised about $6 million. And then after that, there was another challenge. We thought we won after that. So every milestone that we thought we hit to a point where you think you succeed, it's another challenge. And that challenge was going from 20 employees to 60. So what that meant was I was spending maybe $2 million a year. Now I'm spending over $6 million a year. So I have to bring in revenue to cover that cost. Well, guess what? The next challenge was the market hit a peak. The market saturated. So I'm here with $6 million in capital, $6 million expense, and $3 million in revenue. So how long do I have before we run out of cash? And then in 2008, guess what happened? The recession hit. So it's like problem after problem after problem. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, what's going on? And so, I lost a little bit of equity. I had about 50% at that time, sold some equity to raise the capital, got down to 30 or so percent, and had to make a decision to shift or stay the course. And we made this pivotal decision back in 2007 to reposition the company, which is almost code word saying layoffs. So we had to cut our staff in half to drop our burn. A burn rate is your expenses to break even. And then we had to figure out where the market was going and build on our existing platform a technology that had a bigger market runway, okay? And that's where Accelarad came from in 2007. And so we went from a teleradiology-based application to a cloud-based application to solve a different challenge. Got into Ohio State Medical back in 2008, 2009 as a pilot site. Made sure the product worked, made sure the value proposition was there for the clients, and then started to scale up and landed other large institutions in 2010 and saw that we had something. But then I thought, okay, the same way LinkedIn or all these other companies work, where you build a cloud technology and everyone just joins and it's fast and it grows, really quickly. This should happen in healthcare. So we launched it and assumed that all the hospitals would just immediately jump on, start using it, start connecting. And of course, it didn't happen that way. So there was still more work. It was more work to educate the hospitals on how to get connected, how to send out invitations, how to upload and share and view these exams online. But once the fire was lit, then it started to expand. And that's where I showed you that slide with the states, with the hub and spoke type diagram. So it was viral once we lit the fire in one institution, then the others joined, but then we had to sell those sites on the value for them. So just a quick example on the use cases. Hospitals would use the product to exchange images for trauma transfer. So if you were in rural Georgia and you got in an accident and you went to a hospital that didn't have the specialists to treat this particular case, they would take these exams, fire it through our system, and the doctors at Grady would have access to those exams in minutes. And they can remotely provide treatment, or they would helivac the patients over to Grady, and the doctors and the care team would be ready before the patient arrived, versus not knowing what's happening with this patient, having the patient arrive and not being prepared. It's a matter of minutes that can save lives. And we do this every single day. So in 2012, 2013, we started to hone in on the message, hone in on the product, and then as we grew and the market recognized the opportunity, you get lucky and you find a way to get bought for $40 million. That's the story. I mean, that's it. I don't know anything else beyond that. But no, there's other challenges too. System issues, scalability issues. I can remember times where we knew we had it and figured it out, and this was going to be a home run. And then we would have a 2-hour downtime where the system just failed. Oracle cracked on us, or we put out a release, and the release just didn't work. And you got thousands of users out there, and it's just down. And then I think, oh, all that money is gone. It's over. It's ups and downs, it swings. But when I think back, you learn so much in the process. I could take this anywhere, right? And I'm going to take it to the next company, the next, and the next. I have about, maybe 3 more companies in me. Honestly, I didn't think it would take, Terry, I didn't think it would take 15 years. I thought the first 5 years, Terry and Jean-Lou, they took a risk. I don't know if I should share it or not, but they took a risk with us. I'm 20-something and knocking on her door, trying to get advice, trying to raise capital. They introduced me to alumni that were wealthy, that took a risk with us and put in seed capital, and they ended up putting in seed capital as well. It's a little bit, but it was a nice return. And so,
A nice return.
did anyone think it could happen? Probably not, But we were determined and we found a way. And I'm just happy to be able to at least tell the story and let you all know that it can happen. There's just things that you have to do, and processes that you have to take, and hard work, dedication, all that stuff that you hear people tell you, and then a little bit in between. Getting advice is one of the best advices I can give. And so just the product, I don't know where we are with time. Okay, it's the product in general. We talked about just the use cases, routing images. You as a patient, you could go online and create an account. If you had an x-ray, you could upload it and share it with a doctor, share it with a hospital instead of taking it. It should be that easy. I mean, healthcare should not be that complex, and it is. And there's always opportunities when you have areas or markets that do things the old way or make things difficult. You can find ways to do things quicker and better. So we went through this quite a bit. It's collaborative. It's like LinkedIn, Facebook, but for medical imaging. Mobility. In fact, you can, if you have an iPhone or iPad, you can go to the App Store and download the app and look at images right now for free and just get an idea of how it all works. Nuance is extremely happy with the acquisition. That was the other thing that I had to struggle with. You know, do I sell now and take chips off the table, or do you keep going further and try to do more and get more? And I mean, this is tough. So you have money on the table, so you either turn that down and think that you can make it, or you take the money and then you start something else, right? And so I took it. Not as bold. Who was it that turned down $1 billion? I think it was Facebook guy, Mark. The next one I might do that because, who was that?
Turned out $7 billion.
Yeah, the next one I could do that because I have a nest egg that I can go back to, right? I'm not touching it, it's in a diversified portfolio. So I can take more risk, but as a 30-something-year-old, why not make sure that I'm secure financially with all that hard work that was put in 15 years? So it works either way, but I just didn't think my market was that, it also depends on your market, right? If the hospitals actually did explode and adopted it really quick, I would have held back. But I saw it slowly, picking up, and it's 15 years. I wasn't going to wait another 15 years before we had market dominance, when I can create the next Instagram, right? So we had good growth for consumer and physician reach, good client site growth. And again, I talked about how I did it throughout the presentation, but some of the key things is I think you always have to start with your idea. If you have a good idea, if you have good vision, and then you surround yourself with smart people and get rid of the people that either don't believe in the vision or are negative, then it's easier to work through challenges and hit the next targets as a collective unit than doing it by yourself. But think about it, the brain power of all of us in here, if we were to just focus all of our attention on one thing, there's no way but, no other way but success, right? And that's the way I saw it. If I just focused my attention on the goal, I had no option but to succeed. I just did not see failure. And people would always tell me stories, 98% of all small businesses fail after 2 years. So, well, we're that 1%, Just didn't see that. It didn't even register. It never crossed my mind until we had that 2-hour downtime. Then I was like, oh, wait. And then setting goals and a solid plan, so good business plan, small incremental goals, right? You don't think, this big daunting task that you might have down the road that you have to accomplish immediately. It's small increments that build up to it. And it allows you to navigate and make changes and adjustments along the way. I think it's also key to be aware of, your surrounding market awareness. If I would have been more aware of, the teleradiology market, I probably wouldn't have raised that $6 million. Knowing if I knew that the market 2 years later would hit its peak, because I didn't have any runway. So I wasted equity, had this huge expense, and then ended up hiring some operations people thinking that, these people are experienced, they should be able to help us grow. And they wanted to spend more money to chase more dollars. And in my mind, I thought, wait a minute, that's how the .com folks did it in the past, and that's why they didn't succeed. We need to cut costs, find another market niche, and get to profitability quickly in order to sustain. And so I had to let that person go, and that was a tough decision. And then people look at failures. I talk about small failures and big successes. People look at failures as something that's a bad thing, and I think you should look at the opposite. A failure is a good thing, because if you fail, you actually learn more by failing than you do in my opinion, than you do by succeeding. But if they're small failures, it's almost like betting in Vegas. If they're small and you could absorb it and make it through it, then you can learn from it and focus on what's needed for success. You get feedback on it, right? You fell, it hurts, it's painful. You understand why you failed, and then you fix it. And that's why if you have small failures with small increments, you can navigate through the process and get to a point where you figure it out. You hone in on what's working. And it took us 10 years to at least get to that point. But once we hit it, we were on our way, and it was fun. So it was a challenge in the beginning. You live in the dream, raise the money, thinking you make it, and then we found a way to hone in on what was needed after all those successes and failures, and then it started to get real fun. In fact, we were taking employees to Lake Lanier for weekend vacations. I was planning the Vegas trip. We'd take them to beach houses, not to the extent that you would see in, what was that movie, Leonardo DiCaprio? What was that? What was that movie? Right. Yeah, we didn't get there yet, but we're on our way. I was working towards it. I wanted to have that much fun. Maybe the next one. And then knowing your strengths and weaknesses, I think, is also key. So I'm like not good at, socializing and communication and sales and all that, but I had to do it. And finance, if you're not an expert in an area, find someone who knows what you don't know and let them complement your skill. I was an idea guy. I was one who found the next big thing and made it happen. And other people are good at marketing. We were terrible at marketing, and it showed. It was our business plan was the worst. But once I figured out, look, let's not waste time trying to be a marketing genius. It's not going to happen. I could study as much as I want. I mean, it's not the same. It's either within you or it's not. And if you recognize that, then you can sort of fix that by bringing in the right people. And then there's so much more throughout, the process. So just last, what do I do now? So Nuance bought us. There's a transition. When a company buys a company, they don't know, unless it's like a product that you can just package and sell. Our solution is a platform, so they don't know our technology better than we do. So we go through a transition process, helping their team understand marketing, sales, how to run our platform, how to develop on our platform, and so on. I'll say this, there's a big difference, and you all probably know this. An entrepreneurial environment is totally different than a corporate culture, right? And so some companies figured it out. They may have good entrepreneurs at the top that are visionaries, and versus others who are more corporate, who have the same structured approach. That's, for me, is a struggle, because I like to be creative. I like to invent. I like to find new ways and break out of the norm, whereas big corporations, they have to have structure in order to run and operate. But the ones that I think win have both. They can stay nimble and have this innovative, entrepreneurial environment along with the structure. So those are things, more things that you learn throughout the process, right? And so I'm just taking this as a learning experience, again, on what I can do and what I should do and what I shouldn't. Personally, investments, diversify portfolios, make money for you so that you don't have to work ever again. And then I acquired a new business. So I'll be building that up quite a bit and looking at the next tech startup. I can't tell you what that idea is, but I always have to protect the ideas. But I'm really excited about these new ideas. There's a lot of companies that I admire, like Uber and like OpenTable, companies like that bring people together, and there's value that people are willing to pay for. And then at the end of it, the only thing that really truly matters is your staying healthy and just your life, your way of experiencing the day-to-day with family, friends, and just enjoying whatever you do, whether it's starting a business, or working for someone, if you're not happy and if you don't enjoy your life and if you don't take care of your health, it's hard to succeed. And I went through periods where it was stressful and difficult, and I had health issues. And it wasn't until I focused on fixing that first I could solve all the other problems. Because if you're not healthy, how can you consciously think and be clear-minded enough to get through tough times with business or relationship or anything that you do? All right, I think that's it. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the time again. Very happy to be here. Questions? I think.
Hi. You have mentioned that there were many things that you have learned the hard way. And for people like us, we'll be graduating in a year or two and who want to go in the business side. What would you recommend? Should we get an MBA degree first? How helpful is it? Or should we do it like you did it, learn things the hard way? So what's your stand on that?
So are you pursuing a startup or?
Yeah, startup.
Okay. Well, it depends on, it's your preference. You can go either way. I think having an MBA definitely helps because I had to learn things that folks were taught in school. Now they don't teach you everything in school, but I don't think it would hurt if that's your path, right? I minored in business. In fact, I think I got my first C. Was it your class, Terry? I can't remember that. Was it that business plan? It was one of those classes. I think it was accounting. I didn't like accounting, and my professor didn't think I could make it in business if I couldn't pass accounting. Anyways, I figured the numbers. I figured that out, and I can count what's in my bank account. But I think getting a business degree is definitely helpful. People succeed if they drop out. People dropped out of undergrad and graduate school and still succeeded. But I think you can't deny the value that you would gain from getting an education and the networks that you would build. So if you go to school and get an MBA, the people that you meet that you can work with to help you with your business, the people that they know, the networks that they have that you could tap into, that's where a lot of value is. As opposed to trying to start it, what I did, I had to tap into our alumni network and the ATDC incubator. Took a little bit longer, and raising capital, significant amounts of capital, was a bit harder because I didn't know, a lot about just business, sales, marketing, finance. That would have helped. I knew engineering, so technically I was, spot on, but people don't just buy products. You have to be sort of well-rounded, right? So I think it really, again, it just depends on you. If your idea is that good, then start the idea and don't look back. But if you want to build a network of folks that you can learn from and that can help you through the process, get that MBA.
Thank you.
Sure.
Willie, you've got a great product, and what was some of the rejection that you got from the hospitals? It sounds like you say, hey, we can do this so much better by not sending CDs and do it through the cloud. What were some of the objections that the hospitals had to say, hey, we're not going to buy the technology or the product?
Well, when you're a smaller company, the first thing they'll say is, we don't know if you're going to be in business next year. And the next would be, how can you support it with such a small staff if we call you at 2 a.m. in the morning? Is it secure? Healthcare is really conscious of privacy, patients' data. If we send it to your cloud system, is it a private or public cloud? They don't want to push anything to like an Amazon cloud. Can we get it cheaper? That was one of the biggest main questions asked. And then you come back and say, well, if it's too cheap, then I can't afford enough people to support it. So do you want a good product? Do you want more innovation? Do you want quality service and support? Or do you want something that's really cheap that may not be around next year? You asked if we're going to be around. Well, I'm giving you a price that will allow us to be around. And so those were the main things: trust, confidence, security.
Yeah. I have a question. Like, what are the biggest challenges like Nuance Communication are now facing, and how are you going to face it? Like, yeah, that's my question.
I couldn't hear it.
I'm sorry.
It's
Yes, like what are the biggest challenges like Nuance Communication is facing now?
What's the biggest challenges for what?
Like company is facing now, like
The company's facing now
and
at
how,
Nuance?
yeah, and how to how do you face it? And
Oh, good question. Well, the nice thing with a big company, there's a lot more resources. So things that we weren't strong in, like marketing and sales, they had a massive sales team. They have tons of people helping with marketing and getting the word out. So our presence is much bigger and we have more credibility. I think some of the biggest challenges is when you have thousands of employees, that knowledge transfer, just trying to get everyone ramped up to where we are. I mean, we've been living it for years, so it's sort of inherent. I can solve problems in my sleep when it comes to this type of solution in this market, whereas you take it for granted because we know it so much. I assume that it's easy for everyone else to understand it in this corporation, and it's not the case. So, staying with them, helping them understand the product, where it's going, and then for me, I have an idea of where I think the company should go, but there's another CEO, so I don't have his job, so I can't tell him what to do, even though that's how I work. I like to tell people what to do, and they don't listen. So that's, for me, that's personal. That's my challenge. I can't get them where I think they should go.
So you mentioned that you went to school for electrical engineering, but your ideas seem to be very computer science based. How exactly did you go about educating yourself so you could turn your idea into a product?
My question is, can you actually breathe next to it?
And probably now I can. I've seen so many. So, Double E, I did take some computer science classes, and my co-founder, he was more electrical and computer engineering. I was more electrical engineering, specializing in telecommunications and DSP. We had to build prototypes, and it's a funny story. The first product, so I had the idea, but we didn't have a prototype, but I needed to show the investors that we had something that made sense. And I had to show the hospital, it was Piedmont, that this idea is real. So I took a different product that I found online, put our name on it, just to demonstrate, this is what it is. It wasn't built yet, but it worked. It helped them see what we were trying to work towards. And then it bought us time. I always talked about buying more time. It bought us time to build a prototype. And the way I was able to do that was I went to the computer sciences building and put up flyers and said free pizza for coders. Seriously, free pizza and Coke. And we got our first 5 developers by giving them free lunch. And it works. We didn't have the money to pay them, so we just bought them lunch.
So you said early on you didn't have the skills to, say, socialize or the skills in marketing and sales. How did you go about learning those skills?
The marketing and sales?
Yeah, well, you said early on when you just started, you weren't, particularly great at socializing or going out and marketing your product or your idea. So what did you do to develop those skills?
Oh, yes. Again, it was the hard way. We went and knocked on doors. I would go to, different hospitals, set up appointments, and ask questions. Why did you reject our offer, our proposal? The other things that I did was I sought out, ATDC helped a lot. I sought out folks who came to help startup companies in certain areas, like sales, like marketing. I mean, they charge the fees sometimes, but with that, reading certain books, strategic selling books, all that together, and all the rejection. Again, the hardest part was everyone saying no. The first 2 years, I think we had one client. That's why we ran out of capital so quick. And then the reason why I was able to stay in business at the last minute, I sold an account down in Savannah, Georgia. It's $30,000. It kept the lights on for 2 or 3 more months. And I would do that every 3 months. I would close this next client that would bring in a chunk just to buy us more time to get enough recurring revenue to cover our costs. And so it was a process. It wasn't just one thing. But the rejection was huge because I learned from that, learned from our competitors what they did right, reading books and seeking advice from people who were experienced in that particular area.
Hi, thank you for coming today. So you kind of spoke to being the kind of person who likes to tell people what you think. So I'm curious, what would you say is your biggest strength and weakness, and how have you either used those or tried to adjust those to be more successful?
I knew that was coming. I think my biggest strength is just no fear of pursuing what I think is right, my ideas, and making it happen. I can imagine something, and for me, it feels like it's already there. It's real. I knew I was driving a Ferrari. I don't drive a Ferrari. I'm not going to waste that money. But I knew I was driving it even though I didn't have it. I knew I was a millionaire even though I wasn't there. I just knew it was already real. And others would, ask, how do you know? I mean, how do you know it's going to work? It's just that confidence. And I don't know where that comes from, but my weakness, I think, would be maybe it's hard to fess up to some of that, but I think I could be a little bit more collaborative and find better ways to get collective participation. It's not my way or the highway all the time. Even though I'm right 90% of the time, it's not always my way. And so if I could do a little bit better with that and communicating, and I don't know if this is something with tech people or what, but we like to stay in our own little world and don't bother me. I used to go in my office and keep my headphones on and shut the door, even though I was a really good boss. Everybody really liked working in our environment. It was a real fun environment when things were humming. So yeah, I would say that, those are the two, if that helped. So how do I adjust that? I'm conscious of it, I'm aware of it, and I'm better than I was. It used to be 99% always right, and so now I brought it down. A lot of people have so many good ideas, so just being open to other folks' opinions and ideas can help you get further along.
Apart from tough market, what competition did you face, and especially what competitive advantage you had over your competitors? Can you?
The competitive what?
What competition did you face in the existing market, and what was your competitive advantage?
Our advantage. Early on, I had to recognize we were trying to sell this technology called PACS, this picture archiving and communication system. These systems would sell to hospitals for $2 million each. And so we had a team of 3 or 5 people and a lot of developers getting fed pizza, trying to go up against GE or Siemens. And so how do you compete with a GE or Siemens? It wasn't working. So, once you find a niche and you hone in on that niche, if the market isn't saturated, you can build features or pieces of the product that's a differentiator. You always have to look at what's the differentiator compared to what's in the market. How is it quicker, faster, better, or cheaper? Today, we were able to build the first cloud platform in medical imaging, and it took all of that experience from 2000 up until this point. So there's a lot of IP there, and our competitors started back in 2008. So they have more time they need more time to ramp up. So we were able to build a solution in this segment faster, fix the little minute issues. They weren't, these are major issues. And we're talking millions of exams, right? That in healthcare, quality is really key. So we have lossless compression. The integrity of the data has to be 100%, because if you're looking at a patient's exam, if that patient has cancer, for example, you don't want your doctor to look at an image that's not 100% good quality, right? And so building an infrastructure, just think like with Amazon, building that infrastructure, who could do that the same way they can cheaper? The AWS server. So we built this infrastructure over time, which gave us the ability to build features on top of it that makes it more difficult for our competitors to catch up that quickly. They don't have the platform. So that's why, Nuance bought us because of the IP, because of the infrastructure. And so it's not easy to get that. The other things that you could do is get to market faster if you don't have a competitive advantage on the technology. And so then it's a race. That means you have to raise more capital quickly to get market share real fast. It's that you can take advantage of the network effect, be first to market. And that works too. Sometimes it fails. But if it's a hot market and crowded, it's really hard to differentiate. And then you get into having to reduce your costs, and that doesn't look good for long. Because if you're reducing your costs, you're losing margin, and it's harder to sustain. It's harder to stay in business.
Yep, we have a question over here. Did you patent your idea? And if you did, what was that process like?
Did I have it when?
Did you patent your idea?
Did I patent it? Yeah, we looked at, so it's difficult with software to patent software, and it's hard to protect it. But we pursued, was it provisional patents? But anyone could build, another program that's similar, it's hard to prove, it's similar, could perform the same function but use a different, code base, whatever. So it depends on your product. If it's mechanical in nature, it's easier to protect that. But software, you don't get a lot of patents and protection with software. There's a company that built a product almost similar to ours, and they want a patent on it, but they can't defend it. It's hard. It wasn't worth the dollars. We would have had to spend, I think, $50,000 on the patent. We invested like 10, but it wasn't going to gain me anything upon the exit. Nuance or the companies weren't looking at us to acquire something that had the patent. But again, a different product, that might be the case. But software, you don't find that much.
You were mentioning that you had to learn the hard way and through the experience of starting a company. And one of the things that you noticed was that you guys were not good at marketing. So now, if you were to start a company again from scratch, what do you think would be some other features or other factors you would take care of before starting that company? Like one of them being having a good marketing team. What else and what other factors would you keep in mind?
So again, once you do it and you succeed, you know exactly what to do the next time. So the areas that I would sort of help, that I would bring on to help us succeed, obviously would be marketing. I would either outsource marketing to a really solid firm or hire a chief marketing officer. Sales is also key. I would make sure our sales leader is really strong. You got to have a good CFO. And all these people, these are like $100,000, $150,000 a year type, employees. And so the capital, you have to have enough capital to cover those costs. And then you gotta have good developers in a technology company. So if it's software. So the next tech startup is gonna be a software company. The business that I acquired is not a software company, and for me, this business is kind of easy. You have services, and you provide your services, and you collect your money. It was easy to understand what to focus on. And in this business that I acquired, my focus area was get more leads, get more sales, and collect on AR. And that's important in any business. But this business, that's the only real main focus. Once you set the goal, you set the target, then it's just the blocking and tackling. Whereas a tech startup, the marketing is so key, and sales, that's the lifeblood of the company. You get your leads, you get your deal flow, you get your revenue from that. But then if your product doesn't support it, if the clients aren't happy, then all that effort goes, it's wasted, right? So, I know exactly how much I can raise, or if I put in my own investment, I know exactly where to go to get talent because I've been there.
So I think for a product, safety is one of the very important thing. And so what are you doing to make it secured? And especially like when your database is getting bigger and bigger, how do you convince your customer that it's 100% secured to use your product? That's my question.
Yeah, that's part of the sales process, and sometimes it works. But no, we had to be HIPAA compliant. So every user that signs into the product, they have a secure username and password. We're in a secure data center. Every exam that's sent to our cloud is encrypted through SSL. And so there's hospitals go through a checklist, a security checklist to make sure we're in compliance. And that helps. Knowing that other hospitals, other big institutions, HCA, Piedmont, all these others are using it. All these hospitals know that if Piedmont is using it, then they went through the rigor of the security checklist the same way all the other vendors that have software in healthcare had to go through. So that helps. Getting the first one was key. Without the first one and getting the stamp of approval, it's harder to convince them. Exactly right. But once you have critical mass, that's not the biggest issue in their decision-making process, because they know that we have all the answers and that we've been vetted, right?
Willie, were you ever tempted to take your show out to the Silicon Valley rather than staying here in Atlanta and try to?
I did. The 50 or so times that I went out to try and raise capital, it's just harder to raise capital in the South because there's not as much, investors here. So that would have been a challenge. The other thing is they normally don't invest in healthcare technologies. Yeah, so because they just don't grow as fast, unless it's biotech. The next company may be in Austin and maybe in Silicon Valley. I'd really would rather keep it here because there's just a lot of talent here. And from my experience, it would be nice to see even more folks like me back in 2000 take that chance. Because look, when I started, everything that I owned fit in the back seat of my car. And so I really didn't have that much to lose. I think I took about a $5,000 loan from the school and used it to invest in the company and paid myself $1,000 a month while sleeping on the couch and all that for the first year. Just thinking that I should live the dream. I don't know what else. When you're naive, you could take chances like that, right? You just don't know any better. And that's the best thing. If you don't know how hard it is, then you try it and you learn along the way.
I don't see in that lounge area, as a matter of fact.
You know.
But I think your investor has the final question. So Terry, why don't you?
I actually wondered, you were coming out just as the bubble burst and there was no VC money. And I wonder if that wasn't a blessing, an unintended blessing, in the sense that if you had gotten early venture money, you would have gone bust like everybody else. They would have, you would have been closed. And so you had to do it the old-fashioned way with earnings.
We did.
And, that's not a bad way to go, even though that might not have been your choice. But my question has to do with the acquisition of by Nuance, and remember, you're on tape. I wonder, when you get acquired, how much do they want the technology versus how much do they want you and Armand? What kinds of cufflinks do they have, on you in terms of tying you to them, and in terms of non-competes, in terms of what you're going to be able to do in the future?
Yeah. Yeah, they make sure they protect their investment. They take it very serious. We can't build a like product for 10 years. They focus mostly on the technology and they focus on trying to retain enough talent. So we had to go through and recognize within the company all the key employees, and they would put together good incentive packages to make sure we all stayed. Because again, if they invest that much, they have to make sure we're gonna be there for the knowledge transfer and allow them to have it integrated within their system so that they can capitalize on it and start to sell and get that return on that investment. And they're seeing it. From what they say, it's the future of their healthcare division. It's one of the hottest platforms, and why I kicked myself, I should have kept it, but it's one of the hottest platforms within their business unit. So again, it's the IP, number one. Once they figure all that out, we're gone. They can't pay us enough to stay. And they know that, right? It's just, so we're not built to be employees unless they would be willing to, work with us on creating an entrepreneurial environment within the company, which isn't I don't think is their culture.
On behalf of Georgia Tech, I'd like to thank you, Willie, for coming out and speaking with us.
Thank you all.